welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. As you know, I'm John Dykes. The man to my right on the screen is Brian Degning, and there is plenty to talk about. There is absolutely loads to talk about. I'll be sitting in today, but the Wednesday lineup on A Celtic State of Mind's Bulletin going forward will be Kevin Graham, Brian Degning and Colin Watt. They will be your regular contributors on a Wednesday. Yesterday we had our new Tuesday team, Brian, with Declan, Paddy and Lawrence. And of course on a Monday it's Amy, Russell and Tony. I will be on the Bulletin on a Thursday, so I'm not going away entirely, but I think the variety of opinions is extremely important, Brian, and that's what I want from you today. The headline, what would be deemed a successful season for Celtic under Ange? The reason I'm asking that is, you know, after the Livingston game, directly after the Livingston game, you're disappointed. I've had time to reflect. I've not changed my mind on it. I was hugely disappointed, but I don't think hugely critical of Ange Postecoglou. What I'm trying to say this week is it is time now that the responsibility of the manager has to be focused on. It's not as though he is blameless. In no walk of life, Brian, do you go into any workplace as a manager and because of what has gone before or legacy issues, you're bulletproof for a season or 2 seasons. These are the kinds of things I've been hearing all week on social media. No one is suggesting that Ange should be sacked. Absolutely not. There's no knee-jerk reaction. 14 games isn't knee-jerk. It's an amount of games that you're able to analyse and you look at the data. And the most important part of that data is the results at this moment in time. I'm asking, what is a successful season? I'm hearing a lot of fans coming on saying that, you know, we can't expect to win the league this season. Well, it's not an expectancy, but I want to win the league title, and winning half your games isn't going to give us that. So I think it's only right to focus on Ange's part in what is going wrong at this moment in time, and let's hope, obviously, that it gets it right. And there's Kevin coming in to save the day. How you doing, Kev?
Not too bad.
I'll throw it over to you before we bring Brian back in. The big question, obviously, today is how do we actually gauge success this season? I mean, I've heard a lot of people, I'm not saying writing it off, but they're expecting Celtic not, you know, to be in touch and distance by January, and if we win the league, it's almost a bonus. I've never approached a season, and in particular in the last 20 odd years, I've never approached it with that attitude, Kev.
I don't think I'm approaching it with that attitude when I say that I want us to compete. I think the way I consider it is, at the moment, at this moment in time, if you look at what the club has done since February, since Neil Lennon actually left, then I think we are where we're meant to be. And we are where we deserve to be, considering the lack of planning and the mess with Eddie Howe, the quickness that Postecoglou's had to come in, the churn in the squad, the demands of playing a completely new modern style of football, which is different from what even Brendan and different what Brendan brought in, and also completely different to what Neil Lennon implemented in the last 18 months. I actually saw it called the pie and pint culture, which was brought back to the club, which I found quite amusing. Unsure whether that's true or not, but yeah, I did have a little giggle when that came in. We shout for change as a club. We shout for modernisation as a club, and when it gets a bit bumpy, some of the support decide that they didn't really want change because it's a bit too difficult to actually palate. And I think we need to watch here. For me, I've got a massive fear. Massive fear. I want us to challenge for the league title, and I'll remeasure that in January, what my expectations are for the rest of the season. At the moment, I'm not happy where we are, but I kind of expected us to be in this sort of state of flux at this precise moment in time. But my biggest fear is if Postecoglou fails, the whole modernisation of Celtic fails, and the board revert back to type. And they say that doesn't work. We'll go back to what we know, the tried and trusted, and the fact that you've got somebody like Gordon Strachan hanging about doing a review of stuff, doesn't sit well with me at this precise moment. at this precise moment in time. You could also have an argument that the fact that Don Mackay has now left, for whatever reason it is, if you were being really cynical, you would say, well, maybe the modernisation that Mackay wanted to bring in, the board are just going to reject stuff like that, eh?
You know this, Kev, and welcome back, Brian. We will be running an extra 5 minutes at the end to make sure you get your 1 hour fix of A Celtic State of Mind today. A few technical hitches, but we'll get over it. Hopefully that's the story of this season, Kevin. A few early issues, and we'll get over it. A couple of things you said there. Reverting back to type, haven't we already done that with regards to the CEO?
We probably have been. I think I says on the 1st of September that now that the transfer window had finished, this was the age of Ange and Dom, where everything that they do next they're accountable for. Within 2 days, Dom's out the door, and you're going, well, where are we? The only person that's changed in the football club since February last year, apart from the players,
which you would expect, the players,
which is Ange Postecoglou. Yeah. Nothing else has changed, and Postecoglou, for me, I've seen a lot of people comparing them to Mowbray and Barnes. I don't think he's got that cut of that jib. I don't see that in his personality. But for me, if Ange concedes anything whatsoever, whether it be sports science, backroom staff, whether it is players that he wants to bring in, whether it is even changing his style of play or philosophy because he's having doubts about it, then he's not the man for us. He can't concede anything if we want to move forward.
You know, when you were talking earlier there, Kev, about us requiring a new approach in terms of modernising the football club, I think everybody on A Celtic State of Mind accepts that. A lot of Celtic fans who get involved in the comment section accept it. But surely you can do that. You can modernise, but still put a successful team on the park. Surely you can modernise and still put a team out against the bottom of the league team, regardless of who they are, the worst form team in the league, and get a result.
Definitely. I mean, I was on the post-match on Sunday and I says that was actually brutal. That was absolutely rotten. It's the worst performance that we've had under Postecoglou. And I think Postecoglou and Joe Hart, when they came out after the game, understand. They says, well, it's no point playing great football if we don't get results. We didn't even play great football on Sunday. We still couldn't grind out that result. Yeah. And Postecoglou owned that. He says, I know that is a results business. I mean, he's a manager with 25 years experience as managing a World Cup. He knows that results are the be-all and end-all. But how he's going to go about getting those results, I don't think you'll see him deviate much from what we've already seen. On Sunday, and seemingly you're not allowed any excuses for losing the team in the bottom of the table, which is fine. We had 6 players on that park with a total of under 20 appearances for Celtic. We had players on that park who are experiencing the Thursday-Sunday flip for the first time as well. If we weren't in such a state of chaos and flux and having defeats and transition and stuff like that, Sunday would have been written off as a European hangover game because nothing went right. We looked tired. But because of the bigger picture, it's not getting written off. And for me, I was quite happy that what Postecoglou says after the game. He actually showed that he is a realist, and he says, I know that results actually matter and these need to improve for us to progress in any shape or form. So he owned that. I wasn't happy about the performance, right enough, but I'm glad that he came out and utterly owned it. And this is not me saying that Postecoglou is going to be a success. He might not be, but what Postecoglou was a beacon of modernisation, modern football, modern attacking football is something that I'm clinging on to and I need to cling on to going forward. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to criticise him, but if he fails, I fear for the football club.
Well, We will talk about that if and when it transpires, Kevin. Brian, I'm going to come to you because you've been sitting there patiently, and as I say, we will be overrunning another 5 minutes to get that full hour. Just one point, and I don't think we've shared this, but one point on the Dominic Mackay exit. And this doesn't mean that you're good at running a football club by any manner of means, but there's a lot of stuff happening in terms of engaging with fans and engaging with fan groups. Someone brought up the award ceremony, and we're very proud and privileged to be attending that next month. But when it was announced, one of the first people that got in touch with Acsom, Kevin, was Dominic Mackay.
I know.
Directly. And I shared all that with everybody in the WhatsApp group. He was genuinely pleased. He wished us all the very best. And it was a matter of days, I guess, before he was away. So that shows you that he was trying to engage with fans. We've also heard stories on this broadcast where he's phoned fans at home. He's actually phoned people at home, and this was before he was in position. And he's spoken to fans that way as well. Would we get that from Peter Lawwell? No, we wouldn't. But it doesn't mean to say that Peter Lawwell's any worse at the job. It's just the one tiny aspect of that job being fan engagement. Will the fan engagement kick back in? Let's hope it does, Kev. Brian, you've been waiting patiently. You've got loads to say. We're looking at what would be deemed a successful season in Ange's debut. And I keep repeating this. No one, certainly on this broadcast, has said at any point we want Ange to fail. No one wants Ange to be sacked after 14 games. We've ran parallels, I guess, with some previous seasons and how they've worked out. You know, people have been mentioning, Kev, Tony Mowbray, John Barnes, but the one manager's reign that I keep going back to is Wim Jansen's. You know, and we know how that ended up. So there are two sides of this. What's your thoughts at the moment, Brian?
Well, I think, first of all, apologies for the dodgy Wi-Fi. But I think comparing it to other seasons is almost a false equivalency, because the reality is this really is, and it's not a branding thing, but it is a season that's so different from any other. I don't think there's been a Celtic manager inherited the chaos that Postecoglou's inherited. I mean, he's X amount of games into the season, 14 games in, I think, and he's still not getting an assistant manager or, you know, a first coach that he works with. He's only just got a sporting director in. Well, we say he's got a sporting director in. A sporting director's come in. There's still no recruitment structure in place. You know, we're hearing reports that the guys that are there can't keep up with his training. He's fighting fires everywhere he looks. You see the CEO that's supposed to bring him in and has now left. I mean, the club's chaos in every department. He's trying to, on top of all that, he's also trying to bed in 12 players who don't know each other, who don't know the players that are already there, and get used to his system in a time frame where he's also had to try and have Champions League qualifiers, Europa League qualifiers, an Old Firm game, and Tynecastle and Livingston, where we've struggled previously. There's no comparison for that. There's not been a manager inherited that amount of chaos ever at Celtic, I don't think. So I think context is incredibly important when we look at Postecoglou so far, because some people say that, you know, I've heard people saying, well, I don't care what goes on behind the scenes, I just care about what they play in the park. And that's all well and good, but one informs the other, right? If there's chaos behind the scenes, if there's no structure in place, the players can't get the proper training, the proper fitness they need, the proper advice they need. They've not that time scale either. It's bound to have an effect. So it's not to make excuses for the performance against Livingston, which was dreadful. But what I'm trying to say is, when we look at Postecoglou and what he's inherited, it has to be taken into account that it's madness behind the scenes, and it has been for a while. In terms of this season, I've said before, I see it as I think it's 24 months project. I don't think any manager coming into Celtic would have hit the ground running. I don't think anyone in their wildest dreams could really realistically say we'd have won the league this year. You know, that's not saying I don't want to win the league, or I don't think we can, but for me, it's no one expectation I have. I think that there's too much needing to be done. For me, a successful season would be winning at least one cup. I think you can do that. I don't see that being an issue. Getting the team playing consistently well, getting a structure in place where, you know, if we're going to director of football or technical director route, where each head of the department function independently, reporting into him and the manager and the CEO liaison, and liaising with each other and moving on. Because then if Postecoglou was to go, at least that structure's still in place, at least continuity now. Because if Postecoglou was to leave tomorrow, that would be devastating for this football club. Not because he's the Messiah. He's not even a naughty boy, but purely because it would just leave us in a state of absolute anarchy. Because even a new manager came in, Pep Guardiola could come in tomorrow and not do any better, I don't think. Because there's nothing in place like any other football clubs have. It's really baffling to me that we're not taking this into account more. And I just, before I hand back, just my thoughts on the Livingston game. Also dreadful. I never saw the game live. I looked at it in horror afterward, and I looked at the stats and stuff. And one of the interesting things, people spoke a lot about the need to, he has to change his ways. He can't play the same way all the time and expect different results. And that is correct to an extent. But I think it was Declan yesterday called out a stat which I found really interesting, and that he put more crosses into the box against Livingston than any of his teams have ever done in a game. So it showed that during the game he was saying, right, we need to try and get direct balls into the box and try and get Yeti in the end. So he is obviously changing during the games. It just didn't work. So I think this idea that he's no changing, he's no adapting, he's no willing to adapt, tactically, game management wise, I think that's a fallacy. I think where he won't adapt, as Kev has said, is his approach to how he wants football to be played and the way change and the way he wants the club to move forward. And I don't think he should adapt to it. He should change that either, because that's what's, as Kev said, that's what's going to take us, hopefully, to another level.
See if you look at the 3 away defeats that we've had this season. The Hearts game, I think, just came far too quick for us, but we still had chances to win that game. The Rangers game at Ibrox, I thought we were not aggressive enough. I think there was a change of mindset went into that game with Juranovic going to left back, coming in. I think we were very tepid in that game and we weren't aggressive enough, never moved the ball quickly enough, and never believed that we could win that game, even though we eventually had chances when we went 1-0 down. Sunday is completely on Ange. That was a complete and utter mess. That nothing was working that day. We were sterile, we were tepid, we were uninspired. And these were all words that he used in his post-match as well. And he actually says that we weren't aggressive enough. Until the mindset changes in the football and the team that he can play, that we have to be aggressive from the off, no matter who we're playing, then we are going to get away performances like that. But again, for me, that's a mentality within the club that's got to get changed. Also,
that's
as well,
going to take time, right? That's going to have to be fostered over you can't change that instantly. So I agree with what you're saying, but I think it's if he'd been brought in February when Lennon left, then maybe they'd have had that understanding brow. But we're still in this kind of sliding time scale.
Also for me, and I'm going to bring him up for this, there was a wacky options on the bench, but there was 2 good options, the 2 guys that haven't let him doing this season, in Ralston and Montgomery, and why they never ended up on the park at any point is the biggest puzzle, along with Ball and Golly coming back in for the cold. I don't know, they're the 3 puzzling things for me that come for Sunday, and there is questions to be asked and answered about that, but I'm not giving him a free ride. Like Brian, like I've says, if he was to go even in the next four months, we're in a state of chaos once again. And that's why I'm praying to whatever God I need to pray to that it works.
Well, listen, a couple of points on what you have said there. First and foremost, Kevin, this is what Anne said. Irrespective of what I think about performances, we've still got to get results, and that's the reality of it. So it's as simple as that. And that, I think, is what has been a frustration for a lot of people, where the free-flowing, free-scoring, fast-flowing, it's been so long since I said that I can't even remember what the saying is. Football that we expect from Ange is secondary to winning a game. You win the game first. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking about the philosophies of various managers who have come into the club, Kevin. I said this weeks ago, and how, when you look back through the old Celtic View archives, and John Barnes is going on about a philosophy and Tony Mowbray's going on about a football utopia. That was his exact words that he wanted to create at Celtic. You look at Martin O'Neill, he talks about success. And it is about success at Celtic. You look at Brendan Rodgers, he's talking about success. That is paramount, and everything else, I think, is decorating that success with a style of football and the entertaining football that we all, I was going to say know and love. It's been a while since we've had it. But the other point I'm going to pick up on, and I guess that is the whole purpose of that strapline today, is what Brian said around the expectancy. He has no expectations, Kevin, and a lot of Celtic fans are saying this at the moment, of Celtic winning the league this season. Now, if that was to be the case, the aftermath of that is quite a grim prospect for Celtic. Now, I think yesterday one of the straplines that was used was around the fact that obviously the annual results come out in terms of the finances. It shows that we need to obviously start rebuilding the financial element. And by the way, it could have been a hell of a lot worse, and it has been a hell of a lot worse. Declan made a great point yesterday that, had it not been for the loyalty of the Celtic supporters, then it would have been a hell of a lot worse. We don't ever get any complaints when my camera drops out, Kev. It's just normally when the mic drops out. So when you're looking at that and you're looking at the bounty at the end of the season, I think it is a grim prospect should Celtic not win the league this season.
On the face of it, as a grim prospect, but then in football, how many clubs do you see that get an embarrassment of riches and just waste it? And you look at us against Betis, we stood up to the plate. Us against Livingston outdone us. The resources of the clubs are all completely different. So getting that bounty doesn't necessarily change things, as long as the structure in your football club is right and we're going in the right direction. I think a lot of people want to see us going in the right direction, and at the moment we can't see that. I mean, would you trust, go back to last season or season before, would you trust our scouting department with £40 million?
Not based on last season, no.
No, you wouldn't. And sometimes when you end up with that windfall, you end up like a drunk guy at a casino, just throwing money all about the place. That's my positive with it. But as you say, it looks grim. It looks grim because right away, whoever wins the league, your main rival actually gets into the Champions League, and the riches that come with that, and it makes it easier for them to do business in the summer. Again, I would counter that. I remember Dick Advocaat spending money it wasn't.
Oh yeah,
spending money it wasn't there. Look at us. We managed to blow a 10-year advantage in 6 months with money that, like everybody says, the money that Celtic have got, the 40 million in the bank. We had 40 million cash at one point sitting in the bank. That didn't help us because, as the account says yesterday, they made it quite clear we're a football club to develop players and be praised on the transfer fees that we get for those players. At not one point during those figures did they actually say we want to compete at European competition. They says no, we want to develop and sell players. That for me, that was quite jarring when you actually see that written down in an official club document.
Yeah, there's a few other bits that we'll talk about as well in that document, Kev. And by the way, we are on the cusp of 15,000 subscribers on YouTube. So thanks to every single person who subscribes to us, who tunes in daily, who gets in touch on the social media, who buys our merchandise that helps to finance the running of the studio and everything else that we do. This month, we have 4 Acsom jerseys, one-offs. They'll never ever be remade. They're a complete one-off, beautifully embroidered, old-school jerseys, concept jerseys, Kev. And this follows the Fratelli's Platinum Disc, the Verve Platinum Disc, and next month is going to be a Bobby Lennox framed, signed print, and there are loads after that. I've got enough prizes to last us for 2 years. Now, we've got loads of people asking, when are you going to do it, when are you going to do it? Right, here we go. You can only comment at the moment if you subscribe to A Celtic State of Mind, for obvious reasons. Right, so what I want, if anybody wants this jersey right here, behind me, this is modelled on a Celtic jersey that was worn very, very few times in the 1960s. There was an emergency situation. We're playing a European game, 1968, and we're up against French opposition, and Umbro had to send us an emergency jersey. The first person, if you want it, to tell me who the opposition was that night wins the jersey. Does that seem fair, Kev?
Seems very, very fair.
First person to comments in the comments, and you go, right. And nobody's commenting. So that might suggest that it's not Nantes. Jungle Lion comes in to suggest Nantes. Every time somebody says Nantes, I think of Le Petit Merde. So no, it wasn't. Oh, we might have a winner. There we go. Let me just see who said it first. The excitement is absolutely building. Here we go. It's not Leon. Sorry, Alan. It's not Leon. It's not Ren. Yeah, we will ship anywhere because it's me that pays for the shipping, Merrill. So good luck on that one, mate, especially when it's a platinum disc. It's going to cost me a fortune. Someone has given me the right answer. I'm just going to try and figure out who gave it first.
There's a
Mark
few.
Campbell. Don't think there's anybody above Mark Campbell, Kev. Saint Etienne. So we played Saint Etienne at home. There was going to be a colour clash. Umbro emergency delivery to Neely Mockin. Celtic wore this stunning white jersey with a green hoop on the neck, green hoops on the cuff. They wore it a couple of times afterwards against Clyde, maybe a few other opponents, but we called this concept jersey the Saint Etienne. Mark Campbell, you've just won the jersey. It's a complete one-off, and the embroidery is stunning, Kev, for guys of our vintage. It takes us back. Mark, email me at pauljohndykes@gmail.com or DM me or tweet me. Do anything. Just get in touch so that we can get your address and we'll send it out. Didn't tell me you live in Zanzibar or the USA or anything. It's cost me a fortune in postage. No matter where you are, I'll send it out to you. There we go. Anybody else who's watching, get involved by subscribing. We're just going to give away prizes willy-nilly, Kev. There's going to get to the point, I think we've got like a month where I could probably give away a prize every day. So, brilliant. Mm-hmm. That's what it's all about. Also, now that I'm on the subject, we had a Facebook message from a group down south who are trying to get a group of guys fit for the mental health, and they want to wear the green and white hoops. So we're going to throw them some of the Acsom hoops. If anybody else has old Celtic jerseys that they don't wear, they're quite happy for this group to wear down south, we can facilitate that. Get in touch with us. We'll put them in a box and send them down. I think it's London somewhere, Kev, and it's a mental health group. We'll publicise that on all the social medias as well. So get in touch and we'll send all the stuff down to the group to aid mental health. Now, one thing I was reading this morning, guys, was that Albi and a Yeti may well be in line for a call-up to the Swiss national side. By the way, it would be great to see. It would be great for his confidence. But, you know, in looking at that, again, looking at the chaos that has been inherited and that Brian spoke about, we've got rid of 4 strikers and we brought in 2. Surprise, surprise. One of them's no fit, one of them's injured, and we have to run with Albi and a Yeti. And that is the issue, Kev, when you're looking at that bench against Real Betis and you're thinking, well, what changes do I make? Because very, very few options available to you, and certainly those of an offensive nature. There were none whatsoever. How disappointed are you in the management of the squad? And this isn't a dig at Ange, by the way. This is beyond Ange. This is above Ange's head, that we've managed to get into a situation where we've only got one fit striker.
Is it bad luck, bad management, or a combination of both? I think it is a combination of both, and I think the differences in Ayeti's play and Furahashi's play has probably been highlighted, has been more like put under the microscope, shall I say, because of Kyogo's absolutely fantastic start of the season. And now Giakoumakis could probably be fit. He might make an appearance tomorrow night. We don't actually know. But you look at the number of forward players that we have out where you could maybe get somebody else to play a centre forward role. Forrest has played through the middle. Abada's played through the middle. We've got so many forward players missing. And you have to have a look at the general structure of the club and go, why is that? Why have we got so many players who are picking up injuries? And hopefully the new head of sports science that's come in will alleviate some of that. I mean, we all know the way that Ange wants to play football is intense. So there could be times where we are going to be missing players through strains and stuff like that, eh? But I didn't realise that Yeti was going to get a call up to the Swiss squad. Yeti's perfect if you put the ball into the box. You saw the goal. You saw the goal against Betis when he managed to get in there. You saw his 2 headers against Ross County.
Yeah,
he's a waste of a jersey if you're not creating any chances, and that was proved against Livingston on Sunday. He's a type of guy that hangs about on the last man and wants chances created for him, and he will get there. And from what I've seen of Giacomakis as well, he could be the exact same type of player. Just that I think he's slightly better in there, eh? But Yeti is a decent enough player, but only if he's getting the service. And against Livingston on Sunday, he never got the service. And also, he's paying that he hasn't got the energy Kyogo, because we've all took Kyogo to our hearts.
You know, the thing with Yeti that I've noticed is, and normally at home with the wide, expansive spaces at Celtic Park, when he picks the ball up and holds it up, Kev, you know, I'm thinking of other players that did that really, really well for Celtic. You can normally turn it into an attack. What I noticed with a Yeti is he holds the ball up but then plays it back in a direction that it came from. So he might get the ball from McGregor. He holds it up really well. Seems to have a fair bit of strength, upper body strength, but then he'll just play it back into that area. And there doesn't seem to be any of that link up. And I thought when, you know, with the emergence of Abada and the arrival of Jota, that might have opened that up a wee bit, but we didn't see any of that against Livingston at the weekend. Now, the thing is, though, Brian, and one thing I'm going to be taking from the Yeti situation, which I think is positive, up until now, you know, I know there was a wee flurry when he first came in last season. He's been one of the guys that isn't contributing, and now he is. So even when Kyogo comes back in, it's a bit like the Ralston scenario. You know, he might not be a first choice, but you're looking on the bench and you think it's a solid second choice.
Yeah, I think so. I think as Kev says, he is a goal scorer, he's a sort of poacher, but he's probably not someone that, if he wasn't already at the club, I don't think he would have been brought to the club under Ange. So he's having to work with what he's got, really. And I think that's why you've seen a lot more crosses into the box against Livingston. I think they were hoping that something would fault him because the way they were moving, it wasn't working for him. I think he's back up for Kyogo, but the difference with Ralston, I suppose, is, you know, when Juranovic came in, Ralston was playing really well, and you thought, well, is he going to immediately drop out, or is it going to be like a contest for them both? Whereas there's no doubt Kyogo goes straight back into that team. And I suppose it's both the worry and the positive, isn't it? The positive is that we've still got like him and McGregor to come back. So, you know, they're not out for much longer now. But the worry with that is if they're not playing, you'd really see it. And I think, you know, funnily enough, when we were talking kind of at the very start of the season, we were talking about where we needed to strengthen. Midfield wasn't somewhere we were overly sort of worried about. We were kind of thought, well, midfield's all right, it's really forward line and back. Whereas actually now you're really thinking, if McGregor's injured, you know, because I think Turnbull struggles with it, McGregor, if I'm honest. I think the dynamic works really well, but I think if he tries to do the McGregor role, he can't do it. He's a different type of player, and Rogic can't play 2 games in a week. It's impossible. As good as he's been, he can't do it. So Sorrell doesn't look as if, you know, he's no improved the way I was hoping he might have. McCarthy apparently is still really far off the pace. Liam Shaw's not been seen since pre-season. Ewan Henderson and I think Kieran McElroy, I'm not sure if I'm saying his surname right, they've not been seen either. So you wonder if you know, McGregor's injury was long term, or Turnbull, say he gets suspended and McGregor's injured, what do you do? Your midfield's totally short. And the way Postecoglou plays, he needs that midfield overload. So something that we weren't that concerned about before, but I certainly think we're concerned about it now. And I still think that's more of a worry than anything up front, if I'm honest. I think that we'll still get goals, but I think we're struggling to make it work. We're struggling to make it tick midfielder now.
Brian's probably right there. I mean, two of the most disappointing players on Sunday were Turnbull and Rogic, who have been there, seen it and done it. And that you were looking at them to help the new guys through. and
Yeah.
go, look, this is what it's going to be like. It was almost as if the team had talked themselves into, this is going to be a difficult game. And we'll just need to fit our way into it. I mean, Turnbull didn't do much on Sunday near the Rogic, and that was poor. They're the two guys you're looking to create for the middle of the park if your wingers are not going to create. And the two wingers were too easily doubled up on. We had no lifts from the fullback whatsoever, and we had nothing from the middle of the park. And I think it was Lawrence that says yesterday, he made a great point. He says, why were we worried about McCarthy? We were playing Livingston, who weren't going to come out. It was the two creative guys that were made a worry for him, and that was the same. That was the same as me.
You know, when you're looking at Turnbull and Rogic, Kev, you're right in what you say. They know the opposition, they know the park and everything else that comes into that. They know the fixture really well. But they're the two guys that I'm looking at to pull something out the bag when there's nothing on. And I've seen Rogic lining up a few times from distance. And that was a disappointment for me, because it was that type of game where that might have been the only thing you were going to get that breakthrough. And neither of them, I know, so I've got them listed, Turnbull tried a few shots, but it was almost as if, and I don't know if it is fatigue, but Tommy Rogic just held onto that ball for a split second too long or tried to take on one extra man, where we're just hoping that he strikes the ball, because at that point at least you're making the goalie work, etc. A wee point coming in here from Michael the Boy: when Kyogo and Giacomakis are fit, does both play? Well, I don't think certainly they'll both play up front. I know that Kyogo has played out left, and he played there at Ibrox, and he was less effective out there than through the middle. And in fact, for the last 20 minutes when he goes through the middle, he's involved in 3 different chances in 20 minutes. So, I don't think when both of them are fit that they will both play, and I don't think that we'll be playing with 2 strikers. So that would be my thoughts on it. Kev, what do you reckon?
Ange likes the 4-3-3, and I think what will probably happen is Kyogo plays through the middle, and if we're struggling to break down a team, Giacomakis comes on as the plan B, and Kyogo moves out wide to one of the wider to try and stretch the game if we are struggling. And I think you might actually see that used in a lot of away games. If we are struggling to break down on tighter pitches, you might actually see that used.
Well, I was looking at that Livingston game, and it was reminiscent of the 2-2 game at Easter Road last season, where we had absolutely no idea on how to break them down once we got into the final third. And it was the changes that day. I think it was Griffiths that came on. It was the changes that day that changed the game, and we managed to bring it back to 2 each. It was a late goal by Laxalt. But we didn't have the options. This is a problem. We didn't have those options on the bench at the weekend. Brian, what's your thoughts? Kyogo and Giacomakis, do you think that they will feature a lot together? Or, as Kevin says, you've got strength on the bench when both of them are fit?
Yeah, I agree with Kev. I don't see any way they're going to play together. I don't see... I don't see any way. They might. It could be the case. I don't think they start together. Certainly, they might find that as the game goes on, he brings Georgios, as I'll call him. So that's easier for me to say. He brings a big fella on alongside him. Maybe. I just wanted to pick up on a point Kev made about the mentality when he said about the players in their heads thinking this is it's going to be a difficult game. I totally agree, and I think this is why I'm so sort of pro Ange's method. So I was watching the Alex Ferguson, this seems like a weird comparison, but I'll bring it back. The Alex Ferguson documentary, and he was talking about when he was in charge at Aberdeen, and the players were all celebrating a draw with Rangers. And he said, what are you celebrating for? You've only drew. Because they had the mentality that was a great result. And he says, no, it's a good result if you beat them. Mm-hmm. And he changed their mentality to the point where, well, look at the success they had, right? Ange said something weeks ago, and it was about Celtic being underdogs. And he says, I don't like that. He says, because if the players believe they're underdogs, they've lost the game before it starts, because they've got in there thinking they're lucky to win, as opposed to we should be winning. So you can see he's trying to change that mentality. And this is one of my big issues with this idea that, setting up with 5 at the back and sitting deep against a European side and hoping you get a result. Because if you do that, you never evolve. Your mentality never improves, because you've got it in your head that you're not good enough to go out and play your football. That's why I was really enthused by the performance against Betis, because, of course, we threw a two-goal lead, which makes you apoplectic. But the fact is, we went for it, we were brave, and we had that mentality change. And I say, it's just, I just wanted to make that point because it popped into my head when Kev was saying it, and I think that's something we have to remember. It's not just about Ange trying to get want to play fancy football to please the fans. It's about make players always being brave enough so that they can go and impose their game on any opposition, anywhere. And that's the only way for me Celtic evolve.
It's a good point because it leads us into the next kind of section of the discussion, Brian. That's a mentality, and I completely buy into it. It's a mentality, but when you get Celtic fans saying that you've got to win every season, you've got to win every game, all of a sudden we get called entitled. I don't agree with that. It's a mentality that you want to win every game. It's a mentality that you want to win every single league championship. I remember Frimpong leaving the club, and some of the comments he made, you're looking at him thinking, that's the wrong mentality, kid, because we can't be second, because second best, as Bill Shankly said, is nothing. Second best in Liverpool's nowhere. That's what he said. Finishing second, for me, Kevin, going back to one of your previous points, is not a highlight. When did that kind of nonsense start to creep into the narrative?
I know that is... I can't even believe that somebody typed that up on a Word document, sent it to how many departments this has to get looked at, and they says, should we really be putting that in? And that's a good idea to put in that a highlight is finishing second. That is dreadful. And going back to Postecoglou and what Brian says, somebody in the comments says he says that before the AZ game about being underdogs. And you see it, the comment that Paul read out after the Livingston's game, the reality is he's got to win football matches. And he doesn't go out there losing wanting to lose football matches. He knows he's a football manager with 25 years experience who knows, if I didn't win games, I'm out here. Doesn't matter the good that I'm actually doing. Doesn't matter what I'm trying to do. And I think Postecoglou has got that winning mentality. And I just don't want him to give an inch with whatever he's facing with. I do not want him to give an inch, because if he starts showing that weakness, that will feed down to the squad. And for me, the squad have bought into him. Whereas we compare him to Mowbray and we compare him to Barnes. We know ourselves, Paul, after you had that great interview with John Barnes, the squad had never bought into John Barnes as soon as he walked through the door. He was always on a loser. It was the same with Tony Mowbray. But it looks at this thin group of players that we've got have bought into what Postecoglou's trying to do. So you've got to hope it just ends up differently. But I think Ange has got that winning mentality. He just is going to go. He's just going to go about it a certain way.
He said that at the start, didn't he? Kev, he said that it's important that they believe in what I'm doing, the players, and getting bored. And of course he's got a winning mentality. He's won everywhere he's been. It's just he's no one at first. And this is the interesting thing in it, because Celtic probably needed somebody to come in and steady the ship and restructure the place and keep sticking over. Instead, we went for a manager, an ambitious choice, but a manager that's never won anything right away. So you're kind of, I'm getting what I expected from him so far, which is inconsistency, and you can see a long-term vision. It's whether I think we as fans, supporters, can actually get our teeth and take some of these and push it through. But that being said, and I think he acknowledged it himself, Livingston was a disaster, and that was probably on him, which is going to happen as well.
Well, one of the things you mentioned, Bolingoli, sorry, Paul, to jump in there. You mentioned Bolingoli, and where he wasn't the worst player on the park, you actually saw he knew where to be in the system. You saw that he knew to come inside and how to play that full-back role in that system. And I had a look at that going, for a guy who's not been seen since, I think it was West Ham, the West Ham game at pre-season. 17
months he's not played for Celtic.
Competitively, he hasn't played for Celtic, and I think he only got one run out in pre-season. He understood what his role was. He understood where he was meant to be. It's not as if he's went on the park completely lost of what the shape of the team is. And I found that, I went, that's actually quite impressive in a day where we were absolutely woeful. That the players understand what they're trying to do in a shape, but on Sunday they just didn't execute it whatsoever.
The Bolingoli thing. Yeah, the Bolingoli thing, Kev, when it's difficult sometimes to look at the individual performance as someone who has been in the bad books for so long, when the performance as a team was so dreadful. But I think that, at least what we've got at this moment in time is a situation where, Greg Taylor's out for a spell. Montgomery will be disappointed. He'll be disappointed that he missed out on a starting berth. I think, he probably was disappointed that he missed out at Ibrox as well. But regardless of that, we've got two left backs again, who have both had game time, who are now both options. Now, we're on a very interesting number because we're on 14,999 subscribers on YouTube. So I wouldn't normally do this, as the old adage goes, but I'm going to do it today because we've got another concept kit and I just want people to subscribe so that by the time I come off today, that's not a very good shot of the colour. That's a lime green Celtic away jersey. Look at the beautiful embroidery of a Celtic State of Mind's crest, and also the wordmark that was nicked from Oasis. But they nicked it from Decca, so you know what I mean. That's acceptable. We'll give this away. That is inspired by, and it's not a great shot. It's a much better colour than that. I don't know if you see it better up
I've seen it in real life. It's a
lime green.
Colour.
Lime green. It's based on a famous game in 1986 that took place at Love Street, where everybody knows the scenario where obviously Hearts had to get beat from Dundee. Celtic had to score 4 clear goals. We were 4-0 up at half time, astonishingly. Can anybody out there tell me who scored Celtic's first goal that day at Love Street? Because if you can, you win this jersey. First one that comes in gives me the first goal scorer at Love Street, where Celtic beat St Mirren 5-0, and I'm just waiting for them coming in. We're getting some comments coming through. How dare you mention that man? How dare you do that? I can't bring that up unless it's the right answer. Can't bring it up. And it was the wrong answer anyway, so we're just waiting for it. It's a friend of the podcast, I think it's safe to say. And I'm just looking for the first guy that got it right. Now, Brian McClare's the answer, by the way, so well done everybody that got it. Brian McClare, Chalky. In actual fact, it gives me an opportunity to tell you that we've got a brilliant interview with Chalky coming up this week on the channel that you're subscribing to get it over 15,000 YouTube subscribers. And he shows a side to us again, Kevin, that we know and love, that dry sense of humour, that wit. He's talking about Celtic, he's talking about music, politics, food, the whole shebang. It's great. And we get him on the Buckfast as well. So that's part of the show. So I look forward to watching that back. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think McGrory was the first guy that came in with Chalky's name, Kevin Graham.
I think it is as well. I'm just trying to go back. Because you've got Jay McKelvey who says La Petite Merde, then McGrory comes straight in after it with McClare. So I think it is.
McGrory, get in touch with us, pal. As I say, you can contact me directly, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I just need an email address. We can start DMing and I'll get your address. That's 2 prizes. Now, did it work? Did we go through the 15,000? We better have. That's 2 jerseys we're giving away. Actually, somebody's unsubscribed. Cheers, guys. Right, so moving on. I hope it wasn't you, McGrory, or I'm not sending it out. Moving on to the restructure then, Brian. We talk about the restructure, and Kevin mentioned earlier, not much has changed. Have we started seeing some changes in the backroom? Because Jack Naylor, who had previously been the head of sports science, he spent 5 years at the club. He left in June, 3 months ago, to go to Leipzig, RB Leipzig, after 5 years in the role. 3 months later, and we have appointed Anton McElhone as the head of sports science. He's got experience at Spurs, New England Revolution, Bradford City, and Greenock Morton. Greenock, we've got a Greenock boy in Colin Watt on the panel. And PSG's Pochettino says that he played a crucial part in the development of the team when he was at Spurs. Interestingly. Hopefully this is a sign of these changes that Ange has been talking about, Kev.
Hopefully. I was reading an interesting article where it says Australia is at the head of sports science, and that's an area that they're really far forward in. So hopefully Ange has interviewed this guy and can take it up to the standards that Postecoglou was used to working with when he worked in Australia with Brisbane Roar and with the Australian national team. mean, we should have a sports science. I don't know how long it takes you to actually appoint a sports scientist. I mean, Jack Naylor's been away. I mean, the fact that Jack Naylor went to Leipzig actually is a fair comment on the ability of Jack Naylor. So this guy seems to have a bit of pedigree about him. As long as Postecoglou's rubber stamped it, I'm quite happy. I mean, you look at the Australians, you look at, I don't know if anybody's ever watched Australian rules football, how physically demanding a game that is. Mm-hmm. You look at the swimmers that Australia have produced over the years. Then they put that all down to the sports scientists. And I'm sure one of the commenters says it last week as well. An Australian commenter says that Postecoglou's been used to working with the world's best in that field. Mm-hmm. And that's how, when he came into Celtic, he highlighted that weakness because it was not to the standard that he's been used to working with. So hopefully that this guy can actually start to bring us up to that standard.
I hope so as well. I mean, you speak about these games like the Livingston game, Brian. We're not going into a game like that blind. I mean, there's a lot of obvious things you can say about that fixture, but that importance and that focus on these figures at a football club is at its absolute height in modern football. I mean, you've got to be able to understand the game before you enter it. You can't in-match manage the game. And by the way, I don't think we've done that well enough. Nothing should be a surprise is what I'm trying to say. Nothing should be a surprise. And if they have a contingency or if they try something different, you should already be aware that they've done this X, Y, and Z times before. And you should have your own contingency to combat it. I mean, the sports science element of it, Roger Mitchell, who is quite active on Twitter, talks about it all the time. The investment in that area of football is or should be a priority for a club like Celtic. Brian, is this the first signs that Ange is getting, maybe not his men, but the correct positions filled at the football club?
Hopefully is the short answer, the really short answer. I hope that we're starting to see these things starting to take shape now and sort of become the structure. So although I think Ange should do rubber stamping most things with the club, I'm not 100% sure. I think he should have a say in who comes, but I don't think he should be like his men a lot of ways, because maybe I'm not phrasing that properly, but essentially what I don't want to happen is Ange leaves the clubs and takes everybody with him, and it's a mass exodus. This structure should be in place that's going to last the club regardless of who the manager is. Mm-hmm. So your scouting system, your pathway managers, your sports scientists, your recruitment heads, your director of football above that should almost be separate for Postecoglou in a way. Of course, he has to say, can you do the job that I want you to do in terms of getting the players to that level of fitness? Of course, you're going to have input, but I'm not sure that I would especially want Ange going, right, these are the guys from Yokohama, bring them over, and then he leaves, and then they all leave, and then we're back to square one again. I think they have to sort of almost treat it separately. So I think, say, most modern clubs, Man City are a great example. They've got their director of football and all their infrastructure in place, regardless of whether it's Guardiola that's in charge or whoever else, and then they usually liaise with him over the course of the season. We need to be following a similar mould, because as much as you want to say Postecoglou, what do you think of this guy? Ultimately, it has to be somebody else, whether that's the CEO or a director of football, make those decisions, because they're the ones that have the structure we have to put in place this year, which, obviously results in the park are the most important, but if you don't have a structure in place behind the scenes, mm-hmm. which is going to help inform success moving forward, we're going to be in this cycle all the time. And I think January is going to be very telling, because by January you should have a full structure in place for a few months at that stage. And if we're getting players in right away that have been identified, scouted, that come in right away, and we're not waiting until the last day of January and getting a loan signing for the EPL, you start to see we're improvement now. We start to see this is the way the club are functioning. We're going to be more prepared moving forward, and that's just as important for the future of the club as the team is for the present success of the club. What
was actually meaning, Brian, was that Postecoglou had to have interviewed this guy.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He has to input.
This is the standard I expect. Mm-hmm. Or what's your thoughts? What's your vision? Does it agree with his? Because he's the man that's there at the moment. He's the most.
That's what I mean.
He's the most important person in the football club, whether you like it or not, at this precise moment in time as a manager. so he should have a say. But they haven't. I mean, they've quite clearly not went to Australia and brung somebody across that Postecoglou knew. But as long as Postecoglou has actually been in the interview process with this fella, then we've got to say, well, that is the right passage of play.
That is the right approach, without a doubt. Now, today, we're giving away 2 Acsom concept jerseys. The white one is going to Mark Campbell. The green one is going to McGrory. Contact me directly, pauljohndykes@gmail.com, or on the social media channels. We'll get your address and send them out. And normally, if there's other stuff lying about the studio, we chuck that in the envelope as well. There's something I was going to bring up here, and I mentioned it briefly after the game. But I've not been back on since Sunday. Not because I've been hiding under a rock, just because obviously we've got the structure coming back in place at Acsom. And then before you came in, Kev, I was saying that you'll be hosting as of, I think it's next week, with Brian and Colin on a Wednesday. Now, the point I was going to make, Livingston had a guy, 19-year-old kid, who I thought played very well, on loan from Rangers, Ben Williamson. I thought he'd done really, really well. You know, he was not scared to mix it up with the likes of Bolingoli or James McCarthy, 2 guys with hell of a lot more experience than he does. And it got me thinking around about the time that Gary Caldwell, another ex-Celt, has just been appointed as the loan manager at Manchester City, Kev. You know, someone was talking about Brentford having a set-piece manager or a set-piece coach. It's just bizarre. Do you have somebody?
Liverpool have got a throw-in coach.
A throw-in coach. You know what I mean? You've got somebody who's on the tunes and vibes in the changing room. They pick the set list. I mean, it's incredible. But what I was looking at was the situation that we've dealt with for a long time with the loanees. Now, I'm going to say 2 names before I delve into this, right? The 2 names I'm going to use as shining examples are Ryan Christie and Chris Ayer. These are 2 guys who weren't getting first-team football at Celtic, and as part of their progression and development, they went away to teams in our division. So they're playing against the teams that we're going to be playing, that we're expecting them to play against. Fixtures, pitches, approaches, the whole shebang, and it's all happening in your own backyard, in our league. And I think, regardless of what you think of Ayer and Christie when they left, both of those players came back better as a result of their loan moves out. It doesn't always happen like that, but they're 2 shining examples. At this moment in time, we've got 7 players out on loan. We had 19 loanees. Some of them went out for a couple of spells, but we had 19 loanees out last season. I find this astonishing. And if you go through the years, right back to even the Tony Mowbray era, Kev, it's a dozen, it's 15, it's 20, sometimes 22 players out on loan. It's incredible. But what's even more astonishing is the dearth of these players who are actually playing in our league. So they're getting loaned out all over the place. Last season, of the 19, only 2 of those loan deals were in our division. So the reason I'm bringing it up, you look at who's out on loan at the moment. Barry Coffey, he's playing for Cork City and he's playing very well. Jonathan Afolabi, Ayr United. Ross Doohan, Tranmere. Scott Robertson, Crewe. Lee Griffiths, Dundee. Leo Connor, Tranmere. And Luke O'Connell at Queen's Park. So one of our players is playing in our division. Now, I think it goes twofold, this point. You've got the Ben Williamson scenario, where you've got a young player who's actually doing damage to your rivals, right? And it's not always going to be Celtic. He'll be playing against Hibs, he'll be playing against Aberdeen and Hearts, but he won't be playing against Rangers. So it's a safe bet to get that guy out there and get him playing for a Premiership club. And it doesn't matter because he's never going to damage you. But what he might do is damage the opposition. And I know, Ben Williamson never scored a scorching 30-yard winner and all this kind of stuff, but he contributed to Livingston's win. We've got 1 player out of the 7 this season playing in our league, and that's Lee Griffiths. And I asked myself, some of it will be the fact that some of these players might not be up to that level. I get that. I totally get that. But when you've got somebody like Scott Robertson, who's got first-team experience at Celtic, and we still look upon him as being a prospect, we hope he comes back and plays for Celtic, don't we? He's down at Crewe, and he's getting rave reports, rave reviews. And I think the same thing happened to him last season when he was down south. Leo Connor, a Republic of Ireland internationalist, and we loan him out to Tranmere. Ross Doohan, who's got, I think, 50 or 60 games under his belt now, we loan him to Tranmere. I think Doohan, Robertson, O'Connor, and potentially even Luke O'Connell could play for a club in our league. Are we missing a trick here, Kev?
Of course we are, but then the amount of players that we have, the numbers that you mentioned of the players that we've got on loan, that just shows that we haven't got any like pathway whatsoever. We haven't got any like path for these players to get into the first team. Strangely enough, I speak to a Tranmere fan on Twitter, and his thoughts on the two guys, the goalie's decent, but Leo Connor will never play for Celtic. He says he's not playing well at that level. Scott Robertson, as somebody put in the comments there, got rave reviews last year when I can't remember where he went last
Doncaster.
year. He came back in January and wasn't seen whatsoever, and he's went back down to Crewe. Is the Scottish League any worse than what the League Crewe are in? Is it? It's a physical, attritional style of football in those leagues, especially the Championship, League One. Is it a better standard week in, week out than they would get in the Scottish Premiership? Were any of the Scottish Premiership clubs interested in them to actually take them on loan? That's another question you need to ask. When you look at the two, you mentioned the boy Williamson there, but
yep.
Middleton's also on loan for Rangers to St Johnstone as well. I think that's only one. It is a puzzle. That is a real puzzle. We could be missing a trick here to see these guys, and especially us for supporters. Let's look at it from a selfish point of view. Us as a supporter would rather see these guys in sports scene and go, right, that guy's doing well, get him back into the team, because we know that the level that they're playing at. You look at Anthony Ralston, perfect example, went to St Johnstone and Dundee United. Never shone in any way to loan deals whatsoever. You look at him now, we're discussing he should have came on Sunday against Livingston. We're not arguing that. I think it's a strange one, the loan scenario. I just think we've got too many players. The
Ralston one I think is a good point, Kev, because he come back to Celtic and certainly hadn't regressed. I'm not saying his performances were good for Dundee United or St Johnstone, but he comes back and plays at the same level. I think that's what I'm getting at. It's difficult sometimes. Like Scott Robertson, for example, it was Gillingham. He got the rave reviews at last season, I think it was. He did have a spell at Doncaster.
I knew they played at Blue, but I couldn't remember who it was.
Is League One? It's a difficult one to say. Is League One a different, a better or a lesser standard? It's always going to be a difficult argument. There's no argument if you're playing in the division that Celtic are playing in.
I know.
The other point you make, and I think it's a good one as well. Are they good enough to play? Does the club want them? I think if you've got somebody managing that situation, then it's their job to make sure that these players are available to the clubs who are maybe looking for a short-term loan or a 1-year loan. Livingston, obviously, you look at the players they've had to bring in, Kevin, they were desperate for players this season, and there'll be other clubs who are short on players, and a loan deal would work for them.
I mean, it's we seem to take a cream of these talent, and then they get to a certain age and we do not know what to do with them. They're never going to get enough first team minutes for us. And then we just start firing them out on loan to places like Cork City, Crewe and that. We don't seem to have a plan for these players whatsoever. And I think that's how we've seen so many players recently leave, to go elsewhere, where there is a plan. If you're going into, for example, the Bayern Munich under-23s, you know what league that you're going to play in. You know that you're going to get developed at a high level. I like that Ewan Henderson. Where is he? Ewan Henderson sitting there stagnating.
I think Kerr McElroy was the other player that Brian mentioned. He was getting good reviews at the Pars. A lot of my mates are Pars fans, and they said this guy's a great player. I mean, I know it's a different league, I know that, but he's nowhere.
I mean, I'm quite glad Amy's known, but you look at the Colts that are down there. Is that actually doing our players any good whatsoever? You look at wee Moffat's ripping it up, but he's stuck there because we can't bring him back into the first team squad because he's played so many games. That needs reviewed. That needs actually reviewed and ripped up. We've wasted so much potential talent because they just haven't got games, and it needs reviewed. I'm
just looking at some of the points coming in, but what I want to do ex-Celts playing in our league. You know, the reason is that there's no, you're not acclimatising to the standards, the pace or anything like that because you're playing in the league, and these players may damage your opposition, they're not going to damage you. But we don't seem to do it that often. Last season, 2 of the, 19 players were playing in our league, and this season it's only 1. I don't think it's as simple. I don't think it's as black and white to say, they're not good enough. There's plenty of talent in the crop of players we spoke about.
Here's the one there, Paul. We need a reserve league. That's the answer. That's the answer to all our woes.
I agree with that, and the reasons why the reserve league was kiboshed in the first place is because I think a lot of the clubs didn't want to pay the going rate of running a reserve league. And what that cost, Kevin, which is astonishing when you look at the whole reason why it was there and what's actually happened since then as well. Yeah, Held was one of the players last season that went out to Ross County, so you're spot on with that one as well. When we're looking forward and being positive, Kevin, I noticed that you've got a specific player on your T-shirt there, and I think it's only right that you tell us about the developments that you announced during the week. As I say, we're going to give an extra 5 minutes at the end of the show because all the Wi-Fis were playing up and you were left with Mahid on your big massive screen, especially if it's a smart TV. I was watching our Unplugged session on a big massive screen at the weekend, and I thought to myself, wow, if I'm on that screen myself, there's no hiding the grace. Anyway, Kev, Henrik Larsson, tell us all about it.
Well, obviously it was a great man's 50th birthday this week. So in tribute to his 50th birthday, I've written 50 poems about Henrik Larsson, which covers the 7 years he was at Celtic, and it's called 7 Years of Henrik, and it's going to be out extremely soon. It covers all the big hits, as for the want of a better word. Even if you didn't like poetry and you loved Henrik Larsson, you're going to love this book because I've written it from the point of view of people who didn't like poetry. So I've covered a lot of. If you were at the 6-2 game, if you were in Seville, if you were in a semi-final in Boa Vista, I want to capture you and take you back there and take you back to your own memories. And hopefully I do that, or hopefully I trigger other memories that you have. It also deals with other issues like hero worship, religion, how football clubs have become greater in religion and stuff like that. So there is some themes down there, but otherwise it's just a tribute to the greatest football player I'll ever see.
Be careful what you say about football and religion. They might start burning your records, Kev. Now, tell us what the name of the book is.
7 Years of Henrik.
And tell us who inspired the artwork.
The artwork and the title has actually been inspired by a band called The Twilight Sad. Mm-hmm. They released an EP called The 7 Years of Letters. And when I saw it, I went, I can actually steal that. I can use that. So the front cover is inspired by that, and the title's inspired by that. And the band, who have got no Celtic connections whatsoever, Andy and James from the band, James supports Aberdeen, Andy is a Man United fan, allowed us to do it.
Yeah, and there is going to be you know how you get the quotes on the back of books, like unmissable 5 stars? There is a Twilight Sad quote from one of the band members. Tell us what the quote is, Kev.
Who the F is Kevin Graham?
And it was a real quote because I've seen the text. Now, Terence Pat, where can you get it? How's it getting published?
It's getting published via State of Mind Publishing.
Brilliant. Love it.
And it will be, at the moment, it's at the designer, and who was working on it very quickly. Hopefully me and Paul can get it to a printer ASAP, and all your Christmases are sorted. And
we can maybe even get back out on the road, Kev, because that's something we were doing a fair bit before the lockdown, isn't it?
Yes.
Get out and meet people, do Acsom events, get out there, have the book there, all that kind of stuff, yeah?
I'm looking forward to a wee book tour.
Didn't you consider, I thought you missed a trick, I know that you had the whole Twilight Sad thing, but remember the Rolling Stones had a greatest hits called 40 Licks?
Yes.
Henrik Larsson, Big Tongue, 50 Licks.
Well,
maybe that's volume 2, yeah?
Well, one of the illustrations in the book does hark to that, Paul. So we did use it in a type of way. Look, it's a Celtic book. It celebrates Henrik Larsson. It's just done in a different prose style.
Brilliant, love it.
And it is for everybody. If you remember Henrik Larsson, and it's done from the point of view of an older person sitting a young guy in front of him, telling him about Henrik Larsson. So it's done like that, eh? So,
and it's not a scud book. For the younger viewers, ask your dad. Right, now we've given away 2 prizes today. Mark Campbell wins the St Etienne Celtic Acsom concept jersey, and McGrory, a long-time viewer, wins the Love Street-inspired Acsom concept jersey. I mentioned earlier on we wanted 15,000. You've given us it. Don't unsubscribe now, all right, as you did earlier. That was a bit cheeky. I think you just done it to annoy me, and now you've come back in. Welcome back. We accept you. It's fine. But also, I was saying earlier on, there's a group down in London. I'll get all the details. I'll fire it on the social media. They're looking for Green and White Hoops to play. They meet up a couple of times a week, and it's really to benefit those who are suffering from mental health. So there's a community aspect to it. There's also the physical fitness aspect and the mental fitness aspect to it as well. They want to wear the Green and White Hoops. We're going to send them some of our jerseys down, Kev. And if you've got any spares kicking about, ladies and gents, get in touch with me, get in touch with Kev, Brian, anybody at Acsom. We'll gather them up, stick them in a box, send them down so they can wear the Green and White Hoops. That's what it's all about. All that's left for me to say, what a show that was, eh? Tricky start, but it got good in the end. Hopefully that's the story of Celtic season, as I said before. Is thank you to everybody for getting involved. We're streaming right across all the social media channels that we can possibly find. If there are any others and we're not aware of them, tell us and we'll set up an account and we'll put it out there as well. But thank you also to Kevin Graham and Brian Degning for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.